Hi everyone, welcome back to Dr. RCM Academy. In this session, I am going to deal with local and global scope of variables. Till now we have defined a variable whether we don't know whether it is local or global. Let us understand what is local and global variables and its scope. Whatever the parameters and variables that are assigned in a called function. So, whenever we call a function and if you are defining a variable or a parameter inside that function, then they are said to exist in local scope, that is dedicated only for that function. Or in other words, variables that are assigned outside all functions, which means that main program. So, the variables that are assigned in a main program are said to exist in global scope. Now, the variables that exist in local scope, that is within a called function, they are called local variable, whereas the variable that exist in global scope are called global variables. Hope now you understood what is local variable and what is global variable. If you define a variable as a local variable, then you cannot use it globally. You should keep this in mind. So, if you are defining a variable inside a function, you cannot use it outside. That is the meaning of this. Code in the global scope outside all function cannot use any local variables. You cannot use local variables outside all functions, whereas a code in the local scope can access global variables. If you are defining a variable outside all functions, you can use it even inside the functions. At the same time, code in functions local scope cannot use variables in any other local. So, suppose if you have two functions, if you are defining a variable in one function, same cannot be accessed in the other function. Whereas you can use the same name for different variables if they are in different scopes. You can use it same variable name in multiple functions. Let us analyze that with some example. Let us take the first point, that is local variables cannot be used in global scope. Let us understand this statement with some example. So, if you observe this code, as we know, this is the definition of the function and your program starts from here, main program starts from here, and it is starting with calling a function called spam and no arguments are passed through, just you are calling a function spam. When you are calling a function spam, so it is coming to this part of the program, and so if you observe, there is a variable defined called x. So, what is x? The value of x is 31337. Now, after executing this function, it comes back to the next statement of the after calling. That is, after calling spam, we have next statement is print x. So, if I try to print x, what is the value of x? 31337. But if I am trying to print x, it is giving you error. What is the meaning of that? So, x is not defined, but we have defined inside the function here. So, that is called local variable. So, local variable, if you try to access globally, it gives you error. That is, the statement says local variables cannot be used in global scope. Let us take the second statement. Local scopes cannot use variables in other local scopes. Let us take example for this. Again, in this function, you have two parts of the code. This is two different functions defined in the main program, and this is your main program spam. So, it starts with executing from here. So, whenever it is called with the name spam, so it will directly go and execute at this part of the program. So, what is the value of x here? I have defined a variable called x and the value is 99. Inside this function spam, again I am calling one more function called bacon. So it comes to the function called bacon. It assigns a value 101 for ham, 0 for eggs. After executing all the statements inside ham, definitely it will go to the next statement after calling bacon, that is print eggs. Now the eggs is 0. Before instruction whatever it executed, eggs is 0. But when we try to print eggs, so you can observe that what is the output? It is printing 99, which means that you have eggs here inside the function, you also have eggs here. After executing this, so it is come to the spam and try to print eggs, it is printing the variable which is in the function spam, not in the function bacon, which means that so one local variable cannot take the values from other function, because which means that whatever the variables you define in one function, that is accessible only through that function. The third statement says global variable can be read from a local scope. As I said, if you are defining a variable globally, then you can use it anywhere inside the function or outside the function. That is means global variables can be used in local scope. Let us take one example. So you have defined one function called spam, whereas your main function starts from here. Here if you observe, x is equals to 42. Where are you defining this variable x? It is outside the function in the main program itself. Therefore, x is 42. So this 42 will be assigned to x. Next you are calling a spam. You are calling a function spam. So in the function spam, you are trying to print x. But x is not defined locally. X is defined globally, therefore it can take the values of x and print what is 42. After executing the function spam, it is going to execute next instruction, print x in the main program. Again the x value remains the same and it is 42. So both the statements are printed. So next question arises, can I use same variable in local and global variables? Let us see that and how it works. Now as we know, so we have two different functions, one with spam and another with bacon, and your main program starts from here. X is equals to global. The value global will be stored in the x, and you are calling a function bacon. So directly the control goes to bacon function, it executes all these statements. So here x is bacon local. So here in global I have defined x as global itself. So another variable x inside the function bacon, I am defining it as bacon local. Now if I try to print what is x, the value of x, definitely it prints what is there inside the function. Now again I am calling a function spam, therefore it goes to spam function, it executes this. Now again I have used the same variable in the other function, x is spam local. Now if I try to print x, so the x corresponding to the variable corresponding to this function, it is going to print, that is spam local. That is the output, spam local. So first it is going to print bacon local, then now it is spam local. Again after executing the spam, it come back to bacon function and print x. Now it is going to print bacon local because it is in the function bacon and I have defined x as local. After completing all the functions, it comes back to main program, right? So here again I am printing x. What does now the value of x? Because I am printing globally, the global value of x will be taken, that is global. So which means that local and global variables with the same name is allowed. but when you define locally, that variable will be restricted to only that function. Same variable, if I am using in the other function, that will be dedicated to only that particular function. Next, you may get a question. If I define a variable locally, which means that inside a function, is it never possible that I can use it in the global? That is a question. If I use a variable locally, or if I define a variable locally, can you use it globally and update it? Yes, it is possible with the keyword or statement called global. If you use a statement global even within a function, then it is called global variable, not local variable. Let us take an example of that. Okay, so let us start with this example. So I have defined one function called spam, and this is your main function. X is equals to global. I have saved some value that is called global in the variable x. I have called a function called spam. When you call a function spam, so this will be executed. The function will be executed. What is there in the function? I have defined a variable egg with the keyword global, which means that it is not a local variable now, because I have used a statement called global. Before I define, I have told it is global. Therefore, I have assigned global as spam. After executing all the functions, statements in the function, it will come back to the main program. It executes print x. Now, x was global before. Now it is updated. The value of x is updated as spam, and the same thing will be printed as spam here, because I have defined x in the function as global x. I have used a keyword called global. Therefore, if you use a global statement, you can modify even a global variable within a function.